We are debating AI and creativity and whether or not AI is helpful and hurtful in creativity. And if you know me, Dustin, and for those who are just joining us, I love a study. I do. Like, people can say what they want about white papers and all that stuff, but I'd love a study. And I found a few studies. They're on both sides. So I thought I'd just kind of go through them and we can kind of discuss from there. So there's a study done in June of this year by MIT. It's called Your Brain on ChatGPT, easy enough to look up. And the gist of it is they had 54 participants and they were asked in groups, divided into 3 groups, and each group was asked to create a piece of content. The 3 groups were, they could use their brain only, so they could not use anything else. They had to create this piece of content using only their knowledge. The second group could use search. So they could use links, look things up via search.
Sure.
And the third group could use an LLM of their choosing. Now, what I thought was really interesting about the way they conducted the study was that each group was then hooked up to an EEG, and they measured brain activity during content creation. And the brain-only group, maybe unsurprisingly, had the highest level of brain activity, followed then by search and AI coming in last.
Sure.
So the group using AI had the lowest amount of brain activity. But so to me, that would, I guess on my side, say that that most certainly would impact our ability to be creative, right? So like if we've got less brain activity, we're just being less creative. But interestingly, they then switched the LLM and brain-only groups. So the brain-only group was then given access to use the LLM, and then the LLM group was then asked to do something using only their brain. And the brain-only group still, even though they were then able to use an LLM, had the highest level of brain activity.
Yep.
I'm just going to pause there. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's really interesting.
So Charles Duhigg, I didn't read his last book. I think you said it wasn't very good when you posted about it on LinkedIn. But his book, Power of Habit and Smarter, Better, Faster, talks about, I forget the specific exercise that was done, but basically people were more tired. People who had to do things, I think eat radishes, willpower. Willpower was more tired, had to eat radishes versus eating cookies. Because it took more willpower to eat the radishes. So if you do easy things your whole life, you'll never grow. You'll never learn how to fight through challenges and think creatively and find the right assets and partners and everything else. And so I actually don't read. I do my best. This week I failed once to not read the Google AI when I'm looking something up. Because I don't want to become lazy, right? I don't want to become cognitively incapable. Because I've noticed that in myself to a degree, that I have a harder time reading something that's too long between the practice of writing op-eds and just being a millennial. But on the flip side, I think it's all about how we use it. One could argue that we're not walking as far as we used to, so we're going to lose appreciation for nature, and our bodies are not going to be loose and limber the way they used to be. And that's true. But it's also a lot easier to drive to the grocery store and come back home and have all the groceries and not to spend all day digging up the farm. And I can do what I want.
Yeah.
And so my position essentially is that AI gives us the ability to make more money faster and do the creative things that we want to pursue, not the ones that we're forced to do in a workplace that we may or may not be neutral on or even have antipathy towards.
Yeah. I mean, so it's funny because we're going to walk to the store later and we like walking to the store, but we obviously are not digging things up on the farm. And I agree. It opens up so much time in a lot of ways. I mean, the amount of time that I spend researching something now is fractions. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. So I think to your point, that opens up just like a ton more time for creativity, creative thinking, creative work, if you use it that way, right? So like you have to choose, if I'm not spending all day digging up my own food from the farm, then I must choose to do something creative or something that I want to do. Otherwise, if what you're choosing is to, I don't know, sit and watch 40 hours of The Real Housewives, then
Yes. Yep.
like, what's the point, right? Why even use AI? You might as well be writing that from scratch.
Well, so here's the analogy, right? I looked up, not analogy, but I looked up right before here, doing my own study research. Harvard had a study from May of this year. Gen AI makes people more productive and less motivated. The people who used Gen AI for a task and then had to do their own task on their own were more bored, 20% more bored, 11% less engaged, I believe is what it said. And that absolutely rings true for me, except for myself. As I grew my company a few years ago, I started to separate myself from the op-ed writing process. Most of what we do is op-eds. So I separated myself. I did a quick draft or an outline, 150 words. I handed off to the writer. And I wondered, was I going to become less creative because I'm no longer involved in that creative process the same way versus just a quick outline, which anyone can do when there's have the right spark. And I found it made me more creative because I wasn't doing the grind. By keeping myself in that idea generation mode and strategy mode and tactical execution mode, allowed me to step away from the grind so my brain was more rested. And so I think AI used correctly, serves a similar purpose, because you're right that if you just watch TV, drive everywhere, anything to the extreme is going to be harmful. Everyone who drives and never walks anywhere or doesn't go for a bike ride is going to have weak muscles, weak joints, and not really understand how to use their body.
Yeah.
But I do think Gen AI, we're using this actually for the company, we're going through a training internally on how to generate op-eds faster so we can double or triple our productivity. If we can charge the same amount but produce more, everyone retires early. Everyone can work fewer hours and make the same amount of money and do what they want at night instead of working 8 hours. Let's say they work 6 or 4. Yeah. And I don't care because as long as we're having the right outcomes.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It does take that discipline. It takes that focus and planning. Otherwise you will become a mentally, a cognitively declined person.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there are 2 additional studies I think kind of really support your point. One was done at the University of Montana, and what they measured was originality of ideas. So both AI use and non-AI use. And generative AI performed in the elite percentile in originality of ideas. And I think that's so interesting because and the researchers said, we were very careful to not interpret the data very much, and they just presented the results.
Sure.
But they said that there's strong evidence that AI is developing creative ability on par with or even exceeding human ability. I think that's really interesting, because there are times when I've had we're working on a piece and I'll go to AI to research something and I'll be like, what do you think about this? And it'll come back with ideas that I never would have thought of that are straight amazing.
Yes. Yep.
And then there are times there was a study done by the University of South Carolina in tandem with Emerson and UC Berkeley students. And they wanted to understand how generative AI impacts student creativity. So they measured novel thinking, divergent thinking, and originality and effectiveness. And what they found was that AI supported divergent thinking. So it came up with these really divergent sort of lateral ideas, which were really cool.
Right.
But it gave multiple participants the same ideas. So
yes. Okay. I'm processing that. Speaking of cognitive capabilities, I want to make sure I'm processing what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool because it'll come up with these really amazing ideas. On the flip side, there are a lot of times where it'll come up with things and I'm like, that's not real, or that's not right. Or then learning that it'll present the same ideas to multiple people. And then suddenly now you're at risk for providing the same information that maybe another team is.
So here's a question. Maybe the issue isn't creativity or cognitive decline, but it's the need to have another human being in the process.
Yeah.
Because If I just used AI, and when we write op-eds, is there's a writer, then we have a research, fact check, structure edit person, the writer again, then we have a copy editor, the writer wraps it up, and then I take a look at it with the clients in mind and the client and target outlets in mind. That's 4 sets of eyes on one piece. And I can tell you, if it was just me working with any AI system, I would probably not be as quality because there aren't as many brains in that process to say, hey, you found that study from ChatGPT, but did you look at this part of it to make sure of its accuracy or the right language? Because you're right, when I use something like put it in there and I'm like, oh man, that was a great phrase. That's an MBA word salad. Wait. So I do think maybe the issue is less like the Harvard study I mentioned. Maybe it's less about the AI use and more about not having a second human being to interact with during that creative process.
And that's where I think there's a lot of danger because one, like I found in my experience, and maybe you agree with this, maybe you don't, but like the output is only as good as the prompt, right? So like we've had to become very, very good prompt engineers. And I think that there is definitely a future in that. But that kind of lends to this idea that like a CEO or an executive suite can go, well, I don't need to hire a marketer or I don't need to hire a PR firm because I can just chat GPT this and have it write it and it'll be fine.
Correct.
And so I think that's where like, I think it's on us to maybe continue to scream from the rooftops that like, that's not a thing. You're going to get really bad quality output and you have nobody to fact check it. You have you don't have 4 other sets of eyes to look at this. And you're just going to start publishing garble.
But most people are publishing garbage anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the challenges I think in the comms world with AI, and I am not an AI expert. I'll always direct someone to talk to you or Lizzie or Carly or any number of other people for the experts in AI. But as I think, one of the things I think is often missing in these conversations is 95% of businesses and business owners and business leaders, they're great at what they do technically, strategically, and maybe financially, relationally. 95% of business owners are really, really bad at marketing and branding, right? That was long before AI. Now people just have more confidence in it. Before it really didn't matter. Oh, my neighbors, I just have to have the right location and offer something a little bit different and I'm going to have a small business. But if you want to expand, a lot of people do think that they can just use AI, right? And it puts out garbage and they wonder why. But I don't think that's a new challenge. So I don't think it's so much of a screaming from the rooftops because I think then that can come into a lot of not that you do this, but and Scott Merritt is really good at like that head slap that people need. But there are people who just scream and yell and complain on LinkedIn. And I think it's very navel gazing and very self-serving versus taking and educating the client approach versus showing that, in fact, I'm thinking about doing a conversation around this in a couple of months is as we were, the value of the writing, the quality of writing will be helped by AI, but what won't be is the creative conversation with the client. What won't be is if your client wants a third-party author campaign. Well, ChatGPT can't reach out to somebody and say, can you be an author for the campaign? And it can't do the pitch. It can't reach out to that individual and custom that pitch in a way that's going to land that piece or land the interview. Yeah. So I think I think there is a potential, I just lost my words, which is fine. I was talking too long anyway. But basically, I do think that AI sometimes is overstated as a risk in the industry because most people thought they didn't need our help anyway.
Yeah. And then we get called because.
Right. Now they're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. AI gave them the same idea as it gave somebody else, and now they're in trouble.
Right. Correct. So I do think that but back to the original point you were making, AI will absolutely reduce our cognitive capabilities and creativity if we are not disciplined and intentional.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the conversations I was having with Miles Goldman on LinkedIn here, he made a really good point that how will the reduction of writing needs in PR impact junior people in the industry? Maybe I should be more concerned, but I'm not very concerned because I think this is no different than any shift in any market. we're just so focused on it because we're in this industry. And I think that as long as we're training the younger PR people to be focused on strategy, relationships, and being, looking just ahead of where the market is in terms of outlets, in terms of, not just WSJ, but being ahead on the trade outlets or being ahead on Substacks or micro influencers, then that is where the cognitive thinking is always going to move towards.
Yeah.
If you're disciplined on it.
I also think it's important that like there's a mix of, especially for this. Oh, I suddenly have got oh, there we go. There's got to be a mix of like when we're using AI and when we're not using AI, and in terms of creativity, because like from my experience, I found that a lot of the junior folks have started to use AI for like everything. So I'll be like, okay, I need you to reach out to this person and ask them this, and this. Like we ran a contest campaign and I needed them to reach out to a potential judge to see if they would be willing to be part of the judging panel. Was written by ChatGPT. And I was like, no, I need you to just reach out to this person as a human. And like,
yeah.
So I think, junior people in the industry also need to, like, you have access to this amazing tool. You can now drive to the store instead of having to walk somewhere, or having to farm it yourself. But there is a time when you shouldn't drive to the store. If the store is really close and it just takes 5 seconds and you need some sunshine today, go get it.
How much of that though, and I'm turning 40 in about a month. So I am that old man now where I'm saying all these 20 somethings. And how much of that is the companies themselves not setting a culture? Because I remember graduating college 17 years ago, and the conversations on social and in a lot of the business media, it was, oh, the way to get younger people, because I was that person, 22, 23, to work for you is to don't make them show up at 8 a.m., don't get them a dress code, such and such and such. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of silly. If you have a standard in your office, if it doesn't work, you'll find out when the market says it doesn't work. If it does work, don't compromise it. The person who doesn't want to show up at 8 a.m. will do it if can't get a job. They're going to starve, or they're going to show up at 8 a.m. Pain is going to be their teacher here.
Yeah.
How much is it on the companies to say, this is what we need to have happen. We don't care how it happens, get it done. And then look at how someone's doing it and say, what is your process? And coach them and teach them. Because again, I think it's a coaching issue. I don't know if that's a technology issue.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I wound up having to like rewrite that email and then send it back and say, this is like literally just say hi to her as a person and ask her if she wants to be a judge. It's not her.
But I think too, this might turn into more of a debate than we've had so far. So I don't think the issue is AI here. I think the issue is a generation that came of age during COVID that has been antisocial for a decade because of social media. There was a study by the University of Southern Florida, I believe it was, that found that kids that had smartphones in their pockets were actually more social. But the kids who looked at social media on those phones were less social, more depressed, etc. So the phone created connectivity with their friends through texting and I'm sure apps that I've never heard of. But it was the social media component that was actually genuinely harmful. And so I wonder if this AI component is just the continuation of, there's been less dating among teenagers. There's a higher abstinence rate, but it's not because kids are suddenly conservative Christians and Muslims. It's because kids aren't dating as much. The marriage rates are down. All these things are happening culturally. A lot of it related to social isolation and anxiety. And I wonder if the reason people don't pick up phones, they text instead of picking up a phone, is the same reason this person used the email incorrectly.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's just the next stage of that cultural challenge.
Yeah. I've definitely I've seen that like Gen Alpha is really struggling with like, because they're now, and I think 2025 is the start of Gen Beta as well. So we're getting into the betas now. Ooh.
I believe you.
But like Gen Alpha is really struggling with knowing what's real and what's not real, and they have like AI anxiety because they've now grown up with AI and they're AI natives, where like we grew up, we're digital natives.
Right.
So like I remember when we were coming into, you know, that generation, that like the generation before us was complaining because we would use Swiffers and not mops, and like
You're right.
I remember that.
Ironically, my mother bought us a steam mop.
Oh,
It actually started than a Swiffer, but
yeah,
yes, right.
But I mean, you know, it's that kind of thinking of like, okay, we're digital first generation, and so why would you use a mop if you have a Swiffer and it's so much easier and it's so much faster? But there were all these downsides that came with it, and now that is just like tenfold, where they have access to a totally different type of technology. It's AI, it's generative, and suddenly like they just don't know what's real or not.
I'm old enough and don't interact enough with people of that generation to know I believe you on that part. But I thought of another analogy earlier today on this topic. My father raised me. My father ran a roofing company for a significant portion of my childhood. When he started doing roofing 48 years ago, you used a hammer. Now, I've actually used a hammer to put in and a nail to put in a shingle. Is a really long and arduous process.
Yeah.
A nail gun is so much faster. That's what we used. Okay. Is that lazy or efficient?
Right.
You still have to climb on the roof. You still do all those basics. You still have to have good strength and balance and coordination and ability to look ahead on the roof and all those things. Similarly, Dad's two companies after the roofing company, Dad started a gutter cleaning company. And they don't use tape measures. Right? Some companies use lasers. Dad's company uses Google Earth. He was in his mid-50s and he said, wait a minute, we don't have to go to a job anymore. We can measure on Google Earth the linear square footage of someone's gutter to a 95% accuracy, increase our productivity, reduce our costs, and make a lot more money. Is that lazy? Or is that using the tools that are available? And so I'm not really concerned about AI killing jobs any more than cars killed. Yeah, I might have killed the horseshoe jobs that created new jobs.
Yeah.
I'm not really concerned about AI killing creativity. I am concerned about it, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion for those who are aware, intentional, and disciplined.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's got to be some level of both, right? Where you've still, in order to even allow AI to wreck creativity, you've still got to give it a prompt. You still like, so it's only going to do what you give back at it.
Right. Exactly. That's right. So I'm looking at the comments here.
Oh.
Danny Glover. Raushan puts here, AI is an exceptional tool to use to learn more efficiently, produce faster, and free up time. Now, that looks to me like it's a ChatGPT or an AI generated comment. But probably that person, if that's true, I don't know this person. If it allowed them to quickly put their opinion in a way that they felt added value and move on with their life, I don't think that's a lack in creativity if they've used it to automate things in their lives. And again, I'm less concerned if it didn't work, but I'm less concerned that the outcome of that email you talked about.
Yeah.
And more about, did the person understand it? And after you train them, did they learn it and apply it in the future?
Yeah.
And then also, my colleague Robert right now is in Europe, and he and I were on the phone about half an hour ago. I wanted to check some of my talking points with him before I talk to you, because he's a little more aware of some of these things than I am. And he's driving somewhere. He was in Ireland earlier this week. I don't know where he is right now. He doesn't have to walk that far. We can use modern technology to create these phone calls, to do these idea generation while he's driving and I'm making my last cup of coffee for the day. And so I do think that we're going to enter an era where the most creative 5 or 10% will continue to rise to the top.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to be creative. Just like the company, I remember Microsoft did a survey of its employees in 2021. They were one of the first companies that I remember, at least, to bring some employees back to the office. But they only brought strategists because they found that in-person work was best for creativity and strategy and thinking through things and idea generation. And they weren't wrong. And so I do think that if you're intentional, you're always going to be creative. You're always going to push yourself. You're always going to seek those new answers, and you're going to make mistakes along the way. So again, I'm tripling down, I think at this point, or quadrupling down, but I do think there's a risk of it, but I'm not concerned because I don't think it's the problem. I think it's a continuation of a problem. And those who are aware of it and intentional will find themselves able to use AI so that, in my case, I want to semi-retire as soon as possible so that I can spend more time with my 5 kids and less time on LinkedIn. No offense to the people like you I've met. No offense intended.
Do you think, and maybe this is just because I haven't been in an office environment, and obviously work for myself, and do you think that like those strategists in the room, are they like they're bouncing ideas off of each other and making copious amounts of coffee and jotting things down and
Sure.
Throwing a ball up in the air and all that? Do you think that when they're stuck, do you think that they whip out their phone and ask AI?
Probably. I don't know that for sure. I haven't had many in-person meetings in years.
Yeah.
But I did get pulled into a meeting in DC for one of our biggest client now. And I thought it was just to be my point of contact. Someone else at her level was brought in. They brought in a senior VP. One of the partners popped in like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that we were important enough of a vendor to be dragged into these higher level people, but they all were part of that process.
Yeah.
The partner blew in, blew out in 90 seconds. But the relationship is going to be built more on that 90 seconds than it would be by a bunch of emails because we actually saw each other. And I got to know his personality a little bit when he blew in, grabbed his bag and blew back out. Like I got to know that part of him. Yeah. And that's going to be a story in the future. Yeah. And when the senior VP was sitting there, we were talking through strategy and he said, that's a really good point, or no, that's not going to work very well. I think, one of the people sitting next to me did use actually Perplexity for a little bit of research as we were going through it. But it allowed us to get that human connection part. And I think it did generate more creativity. We joked, one person's 5'10", and she mentioned that she dates athletes. So there was a bunch of height jokes thrown in there, like things that couldn't have happened in person that generated relationship and creativity and productivity.
Yeah. That to me says that we have to continue to think of AI as a tool and not like this like weird thing that's going to replace us. Like it can't replace us if we don't use it. And we're the ones that have to use it, right? So like it's a tool for us.
Who's us in this context? What's your definition of? Oh, I don't know if you meant comms professionals. Okay.
No, humans.
Sure. Yes. Well, but so I'm always a little behind the 8 ball, and by a little bit I mean ChatGPT came out in October of 22, and we're just now going through an internal AI training, just for a frame of reference. I'm always a little behind the 8 ball, and that's intentional because so many things that get popped out there may or may not actually end up being what everyone says they are. So I'm happy to be a little behind. My wife is with our children. She's calling me. It's like, just in case it's important. I beg your pardon, everybody. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Hello? I'm going to see if I usually can see the comments, and for some reason I can't see them. Normally I can.
Okay.
I can see like as people.
I have a non-emergency, but a family matter to handle if everyone doesn't mind me hopping in about 4 minutes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. Were there other, because I know you have a few points that do you want to like pick one last point to kind of get through?
So I want to lean on or kind of disagree with your point that if we don't use it, I mean, you're right, of course, but at the same time, we live in a country of 350 million people in a globe that has 8 billion people. a certain percentage of people will always do the thing that is easiest, right? People run up their credit card bills. People don't save money. We have an obesity problem in this country. You know, these things are the average person, so to speak. I do think the average person is going to use AI just like the average person uses smartphones and apps and everything else. I think the question is, how can the rest of us, those who don't want to be average, use AI as a propelling tool rather than a replacement for life?
Yeah.
I think that's the real question here, because it's not going away unless the internet breaks down. I mean, actually, I actually do have a little bit of anxiety that the internet crashes. I'm toast. I have no marketable skills. I jump-started last time I jump-started a car, it literally went into flames. So like, I have no like dystopia skills at all. So I do have a little bit of anxiety if the internet ever goes away.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, because we're the digital generation, as you said, not the AI generation, does it make us be like, oh, well, you know, versus let's take advantage of this new tool, because we've seen what happens with digital degeneration.
Yeah.
We know the reality of it. So how can we be part of the solution to use it as a propelling tool rather than a continuing degenerative process?
Yeah, I will say the one thing that I've noted that's a little bit different, and us as the digital generation, we tend to use AI to like answer questions or like do things for us. And the next generation is using AI as a processor. I
wish we could have had more time to talk about that. I don't know what that means.
I know. I don't either. But someone said that to me and I was like, what? Like, what does that look like? How do they, what? Right. So like, they're prompting it just totally differently, and they train it on different things than we do. They function with it totally differently than we do, and I think that's interesting. And if I was setting up an AI training now, that would be like the topic that took the most time, and I would have somebody from the next generation just lead how they think and how they're using it as a processor and what that looks like and what that means.
Yeah, the training we're doing is we're building writing assistants tailored to voices of specific authors that we use for third-party authors for our clients. And it's taken like an hour and a half per voice, per writing assistant. But once that's done, we're gonna be able to write the first draft of an op-ed in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And then edit it, of course, for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Customize it. I would love to see a conversation between yourself and your team on the topic of AI and how you're all using it and view it differently. I think that'd be fascinating. Yeah. Because so many people do it on the external, like we're doing, but seeing that internal conversation, I think that'd be fascinating.
It's also like the micro conversations that happen throughout the day.
Sure.
There are some of the bigger conversations, but the micro ones as well. I know you've got to run. This
I'm
has
sorry,
been.
I'm sorry, everybody.
No.
Little kid emergency.
No.
So I have to jump. But
this has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.